Welcome to our webinar on Rethink Retirement. And I'm going to wait a few moments to watch as people come in, but I have a wonderful guest for us today to listen to, and her name is Laura Rotter. And Laura is here to talk about how to design the life that you really want to live. And it becomes extremely important as we're looking at this next chapter. And the reason that it's so timely for Rethink Retirement is that most boomers are going to hit 65 by 2030. That means
Mm,
we have 75 million people who have entered a stage that for some may or may not be this retirement, but it is a stage that they are ill experienced in. They haven't really planned as much as they thought they had. They really have thought that their financial plan was going to prepare them for the next chapter or stage in their lives. And for many, they find themselves at odds with what do I do and how do I do this? So the webinar series that we've created was designed to help people listen to the stories of others. And I'm starting with the folks who are in our book about, how they have tackled this transition, and I'm enjoying it because each of the people brings an honesty to it and humility to it that says, well, I really didn't know either. So I experimented with this and then I experimented with that. And who knew where I was going? But Laura's going to tell you a wonderful story today. And I'm going to encourage the listeners or viewers later to begin to think through how they can design their own retirement or call it. One woman said to me, what do I call it? Anything you like. This is the first time in your life where you're in charge. And there is nobody who's going to tell you otherwise. So let me begin by introducing you to Laura Rotter. I took off her LinkedIn, which I love, a profile that captures her so well for today. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could wake up each morning excited about the day ahead of you? Think about it.
mm,
I'm Laura Rotter, as she says, founder of True Abundance Advisors, a financial life planning and wealth management firm. Now, the financial planning side, people seem to focus a great deal on. If you go onto YouTube and put in retirement planning, I'll tell you all the YouTubes are about financial planning. But I've also met financial planners who say they worked all their life to retire. I worked with them on their financial plan and now they won't spend a penny of it. Interesting complexity. Let me continue. Her mission is to empower midlife professionals to use their money as a tool to create more freedom and flexibility. After many years of successfully managing money for institutional investors, and she will tell you about her past, including Citicorp and Para Advisors, she found her new definition of abundance shifting. Sometimes we need to have an aha moment. We have to have our own experience to really understand what it is we're doing and what we could be differently. So she reviewed her financial landscape, realized abundance was about accumulating more wealth, but about employing her wealth to do the things she valued the most. Her mindset changed, important for all of us. I must use my life to make money, to I can use my money to make a life. She's also a podcaster, as I am, and her podcast is called Making Change with Your Money. I love her title. She's so clever. And it highlights the stories and strategies of women who experienced a big life transition and overcame the challenges. Laura, thank you for joining me today. It's a pleasure to see you. Thank you.
Andy, thank you so much for having me as your guest and for doing this really important work.
It's
Um,
fun.
as you
Yes.
said, so many of us are moving from, I don't want to do that anymore, but not really addressing, okay, so what is it that you do want to do and who is it that you want to become? So happy to share this conversation with you.
When you were writing the chapter for our book, you began to go back into the history, your own personal history. Let's do that for the listener and talk about, I was a city banker, you were a city banker. Talk about your career there because it taught you some really interesting things that then didn't quite hold up to the next stage or chapter in your life. Please share your story.
So, I had a close to 30-year career as an institutional investor on Wall Street. And I always have to start by saying I was 12 when I
You can say that. I understand.
And I do look back on that career in thirds. The first 10 years, I often say I was one of those nerds in high school that found a career that was intellectually engaging and challenging and quite lucrative. And so that was the first decade that I was working. The second decade, I have a whole other family story. I have three children, very close in age. I was the primary breadwinner. My husband became the primary child care provider. But I had three kids very close in age. I did not think about my career other than this is what I did. I was supporting a family of five, and a big house and a vacation home and vacations. And I was sort of on autopilot, if you will. The last decade of my career, I was miserable.
Oh,
Um, I had the whole industry had changed to being sort of the frat boys in college who were there to make money and leverage their relationships to make money. Um, the whole economic environment has changed. I was bored and I frankly did not respect the people I was working with. But I was trapped. I was trapped by my things. I was trapped by the 6,000 square foot house. I was trapped by the vacations, three kids going to college, and a husband saying that, you promised to be the breadwinner. And I said, I don't remember signing a contract. But
you're so honest about this. I love it. I don't want to interrupt. Please continue.
And so in 2013, and this may be familiar to some of our listeners, um, I I could not walk away from that lucrative career. And I started to do yoga and I started to meditate. And I became aware that I was choosing to become a victim. And then I'm not going to tell the whole detailed story, but I was ultimately offered a package to leave Citibank.
Mm.
And I really saw this as the universe hearing me. Um, I actually had thought about I'm going to call the head of the group into the office and discuss how we could improve our meetings and sort of try to deal with what I was feeling emotionally inside was missing. And that was when I was offered the package. And that was at the same time so liberating for me. Again, this may resonate, and also disconcerting. Like this crisis of integrity. Who am I? This was a career that defined me for my adult life. And who was I going to become? And I made a choice. This is again 2013, so over a decade ago. I did not at that time think that I was retiring. I was clearly choosing a less lucrative path, and so that was very apparent to me. I was still, though, on the defining myself by achievement. I said, well, could I be a yoga teacher? Yes, but I'm mid 50s and I have tight hamstrings. And how can I put this many decades long of financial language, financial comfort. How can I help others with this? So in 2016, I started my own financial life planning firm, True Abundance Advisors. And now, reflecting back a decade later, I still was on the path of achievement, right? How many clients, how much revenue? And now, as I approach, to be honest, my late 60s, I am rethinking that. I I do see that I'm semi-retired. The revenue number I had in mind has not been achieved, and I've let that go. And I'm on the same path as so many of our other listeners, which is okay, what is evolving? Where is this journey taking me? And And I will say I have the privilege, again, I hope a lot of us do, to have the financial security to go on that journey. I know I'm going to be housed. I know I'm going to be fed. I know I can, enjoy vacations with my children. And from that basis, from that hierarchy of needs, I, along with a lot of us, have the privilege to question what's calling us next.
Reflecting on how your journey has evolved, the first part I want to dig a little more into because it's a real problem for people when they lose a job or retire from one, is that their identity was on their business card. And you mentioned it, and I want to dig a little more deeply into it because until you become aware of how this affects your perception of yourself and others, it's hard to begin to move on to the next stage comfortably because you're talking about a real nice gradual transition from where achieving and acquiring and building the business was still your business card.
Yes.
And your Citibank identity was clearly a business card identity, right? And that yoga wasn't quite who you could become yet. But
Right.
identity is so complicated, but you have to begin to design it. I'm going to tell one story, then I'm going to move back to yours. There was a wonderful woman at a conference I was at, and she talked about the fact that after she left her career, her job, she went to a conference and they put on her badge, her picture, her name, and under it, formally. It happened to be formerly Fire Group. You're laughing. Could have been yours, formerly Citigroup. But in fact, she then had that aha moment where she said, no, 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 I can no longer be formally. I need a new identity. And so she made it up because it was the first time that nobody would be identifying her. And how could she make it up? I'm going to be an author, a consultant, a design. I mean, she could do anything she wanted to, but it was the first time that she could self-define herself. Now, you have gone through this very elegantly, but I have a hunch you had some pain points along the way of who am I? Would you mind sharing them?
My pleasure. So, first, I want to share a story that took place soon after I left City. It was probably the first week or so. I was still living in my large home that had a second staircase that was probably in the past what the servants used that led to the kitchen. I'm bringing that up because it did not have carpeting on it. And I ended up slipping down the stairs and I was fine, but I just burst out crying. And I remember my husband, who, by the way, is a psychiatrist. I'm always like, you have no insight. He's like, what's wrong? You wanted this. You've been waiting to be set free from this career that has really been a burden for you. And I looked at him and I said, don't you understand? I don't know who I am. I have
Ah,
to create this new identity. And so, right, we hold both. The older we get, the more we realize life is full of paradoxes. I wanted to leave, and yet it was so frightening to create a new me. I also still remember, and I may still do it, the first time I went to a financial planning conference. I'm now on the board of an organization called the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners. And I'm introducing myself to people. And this woman that I knew was there, she said, Laura, you can't let go of that. I was a hedge fund partner for X amount of years, that is what I led with and perhaps still sometimes lead with because it's a credential, it defines,
but it was you.
and it was me.
Yes.
So I want to acknowledge that that's part of how we approach the world. We categorize others, we categorize ourselves, and just that awareness is
Yeah.
important to have. Um,
Now, that fall down the steps, though, was a catalytic moment. A transformational one. How interesting. You needed to have something shock you and your husband to come to a conversational realization of this, huh?
Yes, he did buy me flowers afterwards, Andy. Like, oh, this is a big deal for her.
Oh,
Not
I love it.
celebration.
Well, but I'm happily married. You are, but the folks who I work with who have no spouse or are divorced and then retired have double whammies on the fact that they are no longer a husband or a spouse or a wife, and they have double things that are difficult to come to term with. Because the very first part of this process is identity transformation, and it's not easy to stop being who you are and saying that's who you were. Well, was I or wasn't I? This is complicated. Who am I now? As you began to move into the next phase, how did you begin to, you tried out a little yoga. Did you think of yourself as a yoga professional? Did you move into that category? Tell us a little about how the
Well,
transition was going.
well, this is an interesting thing. I don't know, Andy and I have talked many times, but you might see my hair is a little wavy now. I don't know how it happened, but I did several yoga teacher trainings. And without even thinking about it, I remember one of my last weeks at Citi, I had a meeting with Morgan Stanley. I was the client. I forgot about the meeting and I had long wavy hair. I was wearing harem pants and a crocheted vest. I had sort of, without even thinking about it, taken on the identity of a yoga teacher while at the tail end of my Wall Street career. And again, as a client, I was treated like, oh my God, this chick must be good at what she does if she can dress this way to work. Um,
I'm
Things
laughing because in the dress it became a statement. It was a transition statement. Wow.
Yes, and then recently I have noticed that, or the last year or so, that I started blow drying my hair straight and started to wear more professional clothing. Still comfortable, but professional. And the last couple of weeks, I'm letting my hair go wavy again. I'm just saying, even it's like unconscious to me, but I can see that I start to reflect in how I dress, in the jewelry I wear personas, almost like I'm unconsciously playing with
Yeah,
them.
I
Um,
love it.
like I said, I never seriously, I thought I was still on the path of achievement and I'm not yet off. And I felt like either way, I'm going to need to build a business. So, do I want to build a business where I'll get paid 20 bucks an hour, or do I want to build a more lucrative business? And so that was a conscious decision to use my, again, years of financial fluency and comfort with numbers to work with women perhaps going through the kind of transition I myself went through, which was, I just want to make the point, quite a financial, transition. I opened my spreadsheet. I said, I can't support a 6,000 square foot house. I mean, I didn't really have much of a mortgage. That wasn't the issue. But heating that house and getting the grass mowed and all, it was just such an expensive house to carry. And I didn't want that around my neck. I also had a vacation home. I sold a vacation home. And when we took vacation, it was always like I had a concierge who planned everything, so my whole life changed. I didn't even like shop in Eileen Fisher every time they had a sale. I became less of a consumer. So there was a financial
Change.
piece that went along with the identity change. And I have to say, and that's part of the work I like to do with others, that was never hard for me. When you anticipate it, you think, oh, I'm gonna feel that I'm
Mhm.
holding myself back. Not, it
No.
was such a gift to
Yes.
be able to do that. I do also often say my kids were off the payroll at that point, so it did make it easier. Um, and then I discovered over the last decade that, oh, I have enough. And that's
Yes.
also been a
A
journey,
free.
a gift to recognize that.
One of the themes that came out of the research I did on the book the time I spent in senior living communities, is that people feel like their purpose was tied up in what they had done. And now that they're no longer doing it, do they matter? Do they mean anything and to whom? And one woman had 13 things on her to-do list, but didn't think any of them mattered, was sort of filling time with busyness. Anything you can reflect on in terms of as you have evolved through this, how you began to search for what really matters? My daughter once gave me a quote, in the course of a lifetime, Mom, what really matters? And I've kept that little post-it in front of me because it was so profound from a daughter. But it's still a very profound thought for you. You know, as you're beginning to push things away, I don't need more clients, to begin to say, I have enough money. You know, what's your purpose?
So I do want to preface it by saying and recommending mindfulness practices to our listeners. I
Mm.
That has made such a difference in my life. I meditate every morning. Um,
Mm.
some of us might know that to form habits, we attach to other habits we already have. So I don't tend to meditate on weekends, but during the week, it's part of my morning routine. I sit for 20 minutes, and I've been doing that, frankly, since the early 2000s. Again, as I said, that was part of my journey to
I-
recognize the choices I was making. So I would just name mindfulness as a practice that helps you step back and really listen to your body. And your body tells you when you're excited about something, like I said, excited to get up Monday morning, and when you want to stay under the covers. So that's my first answer. And my second answer is honestly, I worked on Wall Street. I worked with institutions. One might say that, for example, university endowments ultimately are helping people get scholarships, but that's one thing to work for an institution, and it's another thing, like as you know, Andy, to work with people, to see a
Yes.
difference that you make in their lives, just the clarity of organizing their finances, them understanding their net worth, understanding what's coming in and out, and how the choices they make impact how they live their lives. So I cannot say how special that is for me relative to the environments I worked for before. And as you know, and I'll just mention, I did a financial life planning mentorship last year. I am now enrolled in a coaching program with an institution called Deep Coaching Intensive. And why I'm on this journey is because the numbers are the numbers. I've always felt the numbers to be the scaffolding for life, but more and more AI, you can put your numbers in, it'll tell you how much you should save. And to me, that's not the work. The work is asking, I always feel like I create a sacred space for my clients. They think they're coming for like, how should I invest and am I saving enough? And I'm asking them
I'm
deeper.
laughing, forgive me, because you're taking them over a transformation from this is tactical and practical to this is meaningful. That's meaningful and purposeful. Finish, please. Yeah,
And I'm just going to say, and helping them hear that inner voice. Now, not everybody's open to that work, and not everybody, therefore, is my ideal client, and I'm not their ideal advisor. But the people who are, the people perhaps who are listening are saying, like, I don't know what's next. I don't even know what's calling to me. That's such important work to be open to and to help someone through. And so that's really where I see my path evolving. With the
yes.
numbers, I think they both go hand in hand. What a privilege for me to have, the expertise and the knowledge to help with tax efficiency and estate planning and
Yes.
to help people on their journey to this next so important part of our lives. As you mentioned, how many people are turning 65, and then how many people are living long, long lives. I mean, my mother-in-law is 93 and driving and flying
Mhm.
different places. So we have so much of our lives ahead of us. And if we have the privilege to have the freedom to really reinvent this next stage, then don't squander that privilege.
No. What I love about you, your perspective, your conversation, is that I have met, because it's for me, I won't say, I love stories that elevate us because it isn't as if this is an empty space. I know people who think of every day as Saturday now, and they have no Mondays. I like Mondays. I mean, I think there's something very exciting about building, whether it's a business or helping someone else, something where we're creating. The mindfulness part is extremely important, getting centered and finding peacefulness for yourself. You're a complicated human, like we all are. And we can discount it. The people who I did a workshop the other day, yesterday, and it was wonderful. Several of the folks who attended, it was a really good turnout, were young women who were concerned about their parents. And I was fascinated talking with them about what they worried about. Their parents were watching TV all day. Their
Mm.
parents were one of those afraid of spending any of the money they had worked so hard to save. The younger women said, I know nothing about this thing called retirement, and I cannot counsel my parents or even know how to respond to what they're doing. Is this good or not? And I said, my goodness, this is a bigger problem than simply the folks who are going through it, who often have had nobody coach them and nobody help them structure what comes next. So it's a very interesting time. I do want to talk about my fourth pillar here, and that is building community, because I'm hearing you belonging to associations and others. Several of the people in the book, many, too many, found that their friends were all in the office, and when they left the office, they had no friends. And that became disruptive because they hadn't spent any much more time outside of the office building friendships. And this became disturbing. And they said, I don't even know how to build one. One gentleman said to me, I was a senior XYZ at this firm, and I called back people who I'd worked with, and they won't have lunch with me. They say they have nothing to talk about. And oh my goodness, I know. And so the insult added to the status change. They said, I'm an outsider now. They don't even sure what they can talk to me about. One guy had lunch with me once and wouldn't do it again. He said, who have I become to be
That's sad.
so? It is. But I have a hunch you intentionally have built a new world for yourself. And I think the intentionality of it is worth sharing. Could you do that?
Sure. I want to start off by saying community has always been very important to me. I've belonged to a synagogue community since December 1989. I'm in my third house I live in White Plains, New York, my sort of 1,500 square foot house, 6,000 square foot house, and now 3,000 square foot house. And I've always been walking distance to my synagogue, now bicycle distance, actually. And I will say, as someone who's built a business, and Andy, you know this, I intentionally networked, right, and joined a lot of communities, 2016. And those included some communities where I would force myself to go and wasn't really interested and didn't feel sort of, if you will, a soul connection. And part of my evolution has been saying, I only want to belong to communities that I am drawn to be a part of. So I shared with Andy before we hit record that last night I was at the annual meeting of an organization, Impact 100 Westchester. It's an organization of women in Westchester County, now over 200, that is a group giving organization. We each contribute money and then give out grants each year. I'm quite spiritual. I belong to an online community called Feminine Wisdom Way. We get together twice a month at the full moons and the new moons. And I have to say, I have made friends from that community, though it's online. A woman, when I was in Greece, was in Greece the same time, and we spent time together. So by following my heart and what is calling to me. And I'm definitely someone, and you strike me as someone pretty similar, Andy, that a lot calls to me.
And with joy, though, not with pain, with pleasure.
Exactly, exactly. Someone once said to me, "You have to learn to say no." And I said, "But I'm not
No.
saying yes from obligation. I'm saying yes from excitement. I'm from a sense of wanting to contribute." And so I find myself, I'm again, after a 30-year career where I was often the only woman on the trading desk, the only woman in meetings, I mostly find myself in communities of women.
Yes.
Even my podcast, I interview women who are in a life transition, and certainly I have men reach out to be guests, and I say right now, that is my focus, women. Um,
Yes. Well, but by choice, you have designed the next stage in your life, haven't you? It's by
yes.
choice. I know. And you've also experimented. And one of the themes that we've been talking about in our master class and our workshops is experiment. Since this is the first time in our lives where nobody's telling us what to do, we can have the choice of deciding this is exactly what I want to be, a yoga teacher, or that's really nice to do, but I don't really need to get into that as a profession. And even as my financial well-being programs, I really want to add value innovatively to the people who come to me. It's not just about having a financial plan, it's about having a life plan. It's time that we design the life that you'd like to live. And while you haven't called it that, I did, because that's exactly what you're doing with them, is helping them see this as a gift. To you, it's been a gift as opposed to an agony. I didn't lose my job. They gave me the freedom to become me. Mhm.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I say that because I was sort of synthesizing what you've said, but that's what it sounds like.
Yes, I definitely do. I've also been in a spiritual community. It's called the Institute of Jewish Spirituality, and I've done many silent meditation retreats. And at one of them, they asked us to write our spiritual story. And indeed, that story of coming in and being, offered a package to leave, to me came after I decided not to be a victim of what was going on in that office. And so to me, that really was a spiritual journey and a gift from the universe, recognizing that I was ready to take control of my life. And again, I encourage anyone listening. And as I'm saying that, Andy, I do want to take a step back. We so much imagine that we need to know what's the next spot? Where am I going?
I'm so glad you mentioned this. Go ahead.
That's what you said. It's trial and error. We don't know. And frankly, we always understand our lives in retrospect and not prospectively. I can look back and see all the decisions I made and all the changes that have taken place and build a narrative that makes sense and that empowers me. We human beings, you're an anthropologist, we make meaning
Yes, we
of
do.
our lives, but prospectively, we have no idea what's going to happen. Um,
No, but
we
yep.
I
Good.
guess I want to say what we do have control of is how we react to our circumstances. So I saw that layoff as a gift. Uh,
Hmm.
I've always been sort of a glass half full kind of person. And I think that part of having mindfulness practices is starting to reframe. You know this better than me. Again, the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. So, how do you choose to see this journey that you're on, and you can choose to see it as a victim, or you can choose to see it as someone determining the,
Yeah.
where you're going without a plan.
Well, but you have a trust. And
Mm.
I've often reflected on my own life, which has been a lot of serendipity. I once said to a friend of mine who is an Indian gentleman, I said, I just believe in serendipity and chance. And he said to me, well, actually, God is watching over you and there's a plan. And I said, well, I'm not sure I believe in God. And he said to me, but he believes in you. And I said, I accept that. Because it's all been by chance. I got into doing this Rethink Retirement because my husband and I decided not to retire. I said, well, that made me curious about what am I missing? What is here that I should know something about before I say I'm not going to taste it? Because I haven't tried it. Nobody practices retirement. It's not like you sign off and practice it. And so to defy it was sort of bold, but maybe it wasn't wise. And now I'm learning so much that I never would have learned if I hadn't been curious. And I'm still not, there's no end to where my journey is going, nor to yours. We're on a journey, and it's a delicious one because we're in charge,
Yes. Yes.
isn't it?
To the extent that the universe allows us to be,
Yeah.
and that we sense it. But yes, again, I have to emphasize the financial freedom to be in charge, and that's certainly, a necessity.
Well,
Um,
it is, but I will tell you that the research would tell you that people who do not have an abundance of wealth can be very happy, accepting what they have.
yes.
And not really, and even when I worked for the senior living communities, their more modest facilities had far better scores on happiness and quality than their more well-to-do ones. And it had less to do than, it had more to do with the people in them than it did and expectations and life experiences than those who had a lot of wealth, were spending a fortune, and were unhappy people. And it had nothing to do with the facility per se. It had to do with what they had lost, what they hadn't gained, what they had expected, what they were expecting from others. It's so interesting. So, to your point, yes, it does matter. On the other hand, what matters is having a center and being able to see life as a gift every day. And every day you wake up, meditate a little bit, and feel gifted. Now, how can I do something kind for someone else? And this has been a kindness. You have shared beautiful kindness for everybody. I can't thank you enough. Let me wrap us up because this has been joyful, and I can't thank you for the joy. For all of you who have come, our job is to help you begin to think about this thing called retirement with curiosity as opposed to with apprehension. I can only tell you every workshop begins with the people telling me how anxious they are before they've retired. I'm curious and not certain what's coming next, not sure what to do. It's true. Humans do not like vacuums, and it is a big, wide open space. So, part of the wisdom I will tell you that we're picking up is don't wait to retire. Begin to think about those four pillars of a happy life. Who are you? Aren't you more than just the job that you're in? And my daughters once reminded me I'm also a mother. Pretty good one, they said, but you never introduce yourself that way. They said, "We know you're a corporate anthropologist. That helps companies change, but aren't you also a great mom?" I think I got it. I got it. I got to add something to my identity because I didn't do a bad job. They're pretty happy young women. The second thing is that how do you organize your day? Think about what makes a beautiful day. We did this in the workshop the other day. I had everybody write, "What's a beautiful day?" And they said, "Oh my gosh, I don't even know." I said, "Well, now let's take some time and plot out because when you no longer have a calendar structured by your office, how will your calendar look? Empty." One woman said, "I have nothing on my calendar for the rest of my life." It was
Oh,
scary.
wow.
I
Yeah.
know. Well, she's figured it out. But that moment was a disruptive one, and appropriately, because she was empty of anything to do. And the third part is why do you matter? What's your purpose? And you don't have to wait till the day you retire to begin to think about how many ways do you matter to who and how to do it. And where are the most important things that matter? And it could simply be I matter because I'm building a beautiful garden in my home and I really want to focus on that when I'm no longer in the office. Or it could be I really am a great artist, but I really want to be an artist on my own. I'm telling you the stories of the folks who have been in the workshops because they're all really looking for me or us, and it's always an us to guide a little bit, to give them permission. And the last one is who are my friends? Well, don't wait till you retire to discover that they're not all in the office. I have friends from my Citibank days and from my NatWest days, and I have friends from my healthcare days, but they are friends in spots, and we stay close because we try hard to. But at the end of the day, each stage in our life, we build new friends and that are interesting at the moment. Sometimes they stay around for a long time. I have some for many years, but sometimes it's for a spot. But here's Then my wish for all of you who are watching. I've written a book, Rethink Retirement. We have webinars and we have master classes and 2-day retreats, but my job is to help you really think about this next stage so you can design the space so that it works for you and gives you great pleasure. I'm going to ask Laura for her last thought, then I'll give you mine and we will say goodbye. Please, Laura, last thought.
No, my last thought, in listening to you wrap up, Andy, is don't wait to find your big P purpose. That's too much pressure. Exactly as Andy said, we all have little P purpose. Take a deep breath, take that next step, and you'll be so thankful that you did.
And intentionally, it's in your hands.
Yeah,
Accept. This is sort of like, oh, just what I wanted, and I'm off on my own. Ooh, how do I do this? I don't know. We'll figure it out. Um,
exactly.
and my website is andysimon.com, has all of the workshops on it and all the information on all my books. But it is a joy to share with our listeners, our viewers, and Laura Rotter. Thank you for being with me today. I'm going to say goodbye. Have a great day. Bye bye.